This is The Joe Gaither Show on BamaCentral.com.
Good afternoon, Tuscaloosa, Internet World, West Alabama. How we doing today? Welcome in to the Joe Gaither Show right here on Bama Central and BamaCentral.com. I am, of course, Joe Gaither. You are the listener, the viewer. You're watching us on the Bama Central YouTube channel. You're watching us on my own YouTube channel or my Facebook or Twitter at Joe Gaither6, or you're listening to us on your favorite podcast platform, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or on Amazon. The Joe Gaither Show on Bama Central, proud part of the Alabama Crimson Tide on Sports Illustrated on SI. We're going to have a lot of fun today. It's going to be hopefully a good show. We were over at the McWhorter Athletic Complex earlier today, so we spent a little bit of time at Alabama football practice this morning. We will talk about that. We'll talk about what we heard from Kalen DeBoer as well. But we're going to start the show with Matt Moscona from ESPN 104.5 in Baton Rouge, and we're going to end the show with Emily Grace McWhorter from The Next Round Live. We're going to continue. We've got these two and two more interviews from SEC Media Days. So we're going to start the show with Matt Moscona from ESPN 104.5, and we're going to end the show with Emily Grace McWhorter from The Next Round Live. And in between, we'll talk about really what we saw at practice today, what our biggest questions are as Alabama football gets going for fall camp. We're going to talk about morning practice and just a little bit more as we go through our Wednesday. Before we get into it, though, we want to thank our friends at Purple Turtle Roofing. They are the #1 and their most reliable residential roof replacement company in Alabama and Mississippi. Whether it's addressing leaks, storm damage, or general wear and tear, Purple Turtle Roofing is going to be there to deliver exceptional roof repair for your property. Purple Turtle Roofing is the leading expert in local residential roofing solutions, specializing in providing unparalleled service and quality craftsmanship for all your roof replacement needs. Call Dustin Foley and his team today at 877-PT-ROOF-5 for a free roof inspection. That's 877-787-6635 to schedule your appointment, and one of their qualified employees will come check out your roof for free and make sure that you're prepared for any and all of life's storms. We're going to check out our interview with Matt Moscona, ESPN 104.5 in Baton Rouge, and we're going to talk about a little bit of fall practice as Alabama got back going today, day #1 over the McWhorter Athletic Facility, and we'll finish it up with our conversation with Emily Grace McWhorter from The Next Round Live.
Right here on the Joe Gaither Show in Dallas for SEC Media Days. We've already had Alabama. They have come and gone, and so now we want to talk to maybe Alabama's biggest nemesis, Matt Moscona. You follow him on Twitter at Matt Moscona, ESPN Baton Rouge. He joined me in the fall just before Alabama and LSU's game kicked off. We enjoyed him having that appearance. I appreciate your time today, Matt. How's your SEC Media Days treating you?
Really good. I've been doing this for about a dozen years, and it's always it's a highlight of the summer. We get to talk ball for 4 straight days, and I love to get to meet the student athletes because a lot of times it's players that you may never otherwise have a chance to talk to and get to know their stories. So I enjoy it.
Well, everybody's been on the Alabama side, maybe coming into your mentions about some of your takes about Kalen DeBoer. So we heard from Kalen DeBoer today. Did anything change for your opinion for Coach DeBoer?
There have been Alabama fans who have been in my
mentions. Well, they're a little sensitive, and you know.
I'll have to go check my mentions though. I didn't
muting them all.
No, man. Listen, I think my position pretty consistently has been that, look, I think Kalen DeBoer is a really good coach. He's had success everywhere he's been. And I don't think Alabama's going to fall off a cliff. I've been very consistent. I don't think Alabama's going 7-5. They're not going to stink. Nick Saban set a standard that is impossible for anybody to match. You would literally have to be the greatest coach in the history of college football to surpass Nick Saban's standard. I look at Alabama this year. You lost 2 NFL corners. I don't think your defensive line is as talented as we've seen in the past. Had serious questions about receiver, losing Amari Niblack at tight end. And then Nick Saban, who ran your defense. So I think you're going to – it's totally plausible to think you'd see a drop-off. And I think that's going to happen this year, and I'm curious how Alabama fans who've been accustomed to this standard for so many years now, how they handle it.
We'll see.
Now, when I'm on my radio show, I say that. I just say it in a much more theatrical way.
We like the theatrics. We'll see how the Alabama fans react, because I'm curious as well. Will they be patient and realize, okay, the standard was impossibly high? Alabama has a lot of big road games, and one of them is down in Baton Rouge.
Yeah.
Alabama has traditionally done well in Baton Rouge. Usually the road team does well, but Brian Kelly, in his first time playing that game in Baton Rouge in Tiger Stadium, won 32-31 overtime game, go for two in the game. How does Brian Kelly go 2-0 against Alabama in Tiger Stadium?
Well, the defense has to get a lot better. I mean, just the game in Tuscaloosa a year ago, Jaden Daniels was pretty special until he was knocked out of the game, but they couldn't stop Jalen Milroe. I mean, LSU's defense couldn't stop anybody last year. The Tigers had 3 losses, and in those losses, the defense allowed an average of 48 points in the 3 losses. So I think that's easier said than done. I still think LSU, personnel-wise, defensively, is nowhere near what their standard has been. I don't know that LSU has a draftable prospect in the secondary on this team.
That's highly unusual.
It's a mouthful. I mean, it's when you have the DBU conversation, I don't care to litigate it. If it's LSU or Florida or Bama, Ohio State, they've all been really good.
Sure.
LSU's had a ton of talented defensive backs, and to have a year where you don't have a single draftable player in that position group it's bizarre, especially in this league where you have great quarterback play and really good receivers. So, how does Brian Kelly go 2-0 against Alabama? I think the offense will be fine for LSU this year, even with what they lost. The defense has to get much better.
Well, I want to ask you about that offense. Coach Saban kind of compared Garrett Nussmeier to maybe he might have a Mac Jones type season. You're replacing a Heisman Trophy winning quarterback in Jaden Daniels, top 5 NFL draft pick. What can we expect out of Garrett Nussmeier?
Yeah, Garrett checks every box, right? You go to Central Casting and you're looking for a quarterback. Well, he's got size. He can make all the throws. He's got great confidence. He's the son of a coach, so high football IQ. I mean, he checks every box, and he's also such an outlier because guys don't stay. They don't sit for 3 years waiting for their turn to play anymore, especially at that position. So I think Garrett is everything you want in a quarterback. He just doesn't have the game experience. Over 3 years, he's had plenty of opportunities in mop-up duties and different instances, injuries he's gone in. So, but to be your starter for 12 regular season games into the postseason, he's not done that. So that's the unknown. The good news is he has one of the best offensive lines in the country. LSU always has really good receivers, so they'll have guys that can run fast and jump high and catch the ball and all that stuff. So they'll be really talented on offense, and I don't think they're not going to be as good as they were a year ago. I mean, last year LSU led the country in scoring offense, total offense. I don't think they do that, but this is a team that can average 40 a game instead of 48. Yeah, I think so. And if you average 40 a game, you're going to have a chance to win a lot of games. So the question, I don't think, is the offense or Nussmeier. It's how much better can Blake Baker make that defense in year one.
We're talking to Matt Moscona, and you listen to him on ESPN 104.5 with the new 12-team college football playoff. We've heard a lot about Texas and Georgia, and maybe they're going to be in the SEC title game. Is LSU, or the fan base, is the internal expectations to be in that conversation to make the playoff?
Well, it's always the expectation to be in the conversation.
Is it realistic?
That's a better question. Yeah, I think it's realistic, but there's questions. And I always look at the beginning of a season, I look at who has the fewest amount of questions against the most manageable schedule. And when you look at LSU, you're replacing a Heisman-winning quarterback, 2 first-round picks at receiver, your Broyles Award finalist, offensive coordinator. You were literally the worst defense in program history a year ago. So there's a lot of questions. How much better is the defense? How can Nussmeier play? Who catches the ball for LSU? So all of that leads you to believe that maybe LSU falls short of that this year in what I think is going to be a really competitive SEC. But they're also a team that's well coached, and they do have a lot of talent across the board that if the ball bounces their way, could end up there. If you're going to circle one game, I would tell you look at Ole Miss. If LSU can get to the Ole Miss game at 5-0, they get an open date before they play Ole Miss, and Ole Miss has 2 back-to-back road conference games. Like, LSU's got a tough schedule, but how it shapes out, open date before Ole Miss, open date before Bama, you play Vandy before you play Oklahoma. a lot of that does play into LSU's favor, the kind of how the schedule is mapped out. We'll see if they can navigate it.
All right, last question. We remember, too, a couple years ago, the home-and-home matchup with Texas. Obviously, Oklahoma on the schedule for LSU. We're in Dallas because of the Texas and Oklahoma additions in the SEC. What's been your overall impressions bringing in two massive programs into the SEC?
Yeah, I think confidence for Texas is sky high. They were a playoff team a year ago, and they returned just about everybody, well coached, and they have a lot of talent. And when you look at the schedule, it's almost as if the schedule makers in the league said to Texas, here, make your own schedule, pave it in gold. So they got a big break this year. Oklahoma's on the flip side of that. Their schedule's brutal. And I'm going to be so curious in letting Dylan Gabriel walk to favor the sophomore five-star Jackson Arnold. It's a big risk. Dylan Gabriel right now is the betting favorite for the Heisman at Oregon. If that guy goes and leads Oregon to a playoff and wins the Heisman, and Oklahoma struggles to like an 8-4 type season, I think it's a lot of pressure on Brent Venables for that decision, to err on the side of the young guy instead of the veteran. So we'll see how that goes up in Boomer Sooner land.
Listen to Matt Moscona, ESPN 104.5 in Baton Rouge. Follow him at Matt Moscona on the Twitter machine. Listen with your brain in your ears, not with your heart. We appreciate Matt Moscona joining us on the Joe Gaither Show right here on Bama Central and BamaCentral.com.
That was our time with Matt Moscona right down there at SEC Media Days, and I really appreciate him joining us, even if I did mispronounce his name half the time on the interview. But we're here in Tuscaloosa, and it's the first day. It was the first day of fall camp, and we just got done over at the McWhorter Athletic Facility. We got back home about 1 o'clock or so, and we want to thank Kalen DeBoer for moving everything to the morning as we got up, had our work day, got over to the facility and knocked everything out. And now, obviously, we are here on the Joe Gaither Show to talk about what we saw from the first day of fall camp. You're as always invited to leave a comment, a question, query, or complaint at Joe Gaither 6 if you'd like to do that on whatever social media machine that you like. But we're going to talk about what we saw over at fall camp. We're going to talk about our biggest question for Alabama going into fall camp. I've actually got two, one on offense and one on defense. We're going to talk just a little bit about two commitments that Alabama football got. Class of 2027, do we even care about rising sophomores in high school? We'll see. We'll talk about two class of 2027 commits, and Alabama lost two commitments over the weekend, both to the Auburn Tigers. Are you concerned? Hugh Freeze taking a big old bite out of Kalen DeBoer's recruiting class. So we'll talk about all that, and then we'll finish it up with a little defensive discussion, as tomorrow we will hear from Kane Womack and several of the defensive leaders. And then, as we said at the very beginning, we'll finish it up with a short conversation that we had with Emily Grace McWhorter from the Next Round Live. So here we go. What was your biggest question? Or what is your biggest question for Alabama football going into fall camp? I've got one on the offensive side of the ball, and I've got one on the defensive side of the ball. And so we'll start on offense, and really it goes into tackles, offensive tackles. Who's going to play offensive tackle for the Crimson Tide? The interior, Alabama's interior of its offensive line is pretty much set in stone. You've got Parker Brailsford playing center. You've got Tyler Booker playing left guard, and you got Jaden Roberts playing right guard. And you look at that, we've harped on how strong that is all summer long. You got to look at the tackles, and you've got some issues, but question marks per se, questions to answer. And as we opened up fall camp day number 1, we saw Elijah Pritchett manning the tackle position at left tackle, and Wilkin Formby at the right tackle position. And I wonder how it's going to shake out with Caden Proctor returning from the transfer portal, spending the spring in Iowa before coming back to Tuscaloosa to participate in summer workouts, and now obviously full go for fall camp. How's it going to be at the left tackle position? Is it going to be just Caden Proctor's job to slowly and steadily win back, as he was Alabama's starting left tackle last season for most of the year, he and Elijah Pritchett going back and forth? But will it just be a matter of time before Caden Proctor returns to start at left tackle? And if that's the case, who mans the right tackle position? Is it Senor Taco Casa, Mr. Wilkin Formby? Or is it going to be Elijah Pritchett? And so that is really the main question. Who's going to play right tackle? Because I think it's a foregone conclusion that Caden Proctor will end up being the left tackle for the Crimson Tide. And so I wonder and propose the question to you, Kalen DeBoer, and you, the audience. Why are we messing around with Elijah Pritchett playing left tackle? If it's going to be Caden Proctor's job, why don't we just go ahead and figure out who's going to play right tackle? Is it going to be Elijah Pritchett, or is it going to be Wilkin Formby playing right tackle for Alabama this year? If it's going to be Wilkin Formby, okay, no big deal. You haven't lost really any reps. But if it's going to be Elijah Pritchett, then go ahead and move him from left to right tackle. Get him these reps with the starting offensive line. Put him in there at right tackle, and let's get our first 5 settled sooner rather than later. You got, 30-something days until Alabama, 31 days until Alabama kicks it off against Western Kentucky. And as fall camp opened up today, it's time to have a clearer picture of what you're going to do along your offensive line. I think obviously there was a point in time during the summer, and obviously during spring ball, Elijah Pritchett thought he was going to be the starting left tackle and had no competition. Caden Proctor was in Iowa, so of course he took all the snaps at left tackle, and Wilkin Formby taking a lot of the snaps at right tackle. And I think Wilkin is going to be a good fit at right tackle if he ends up winning the job. I think he's going to do just fine there. I wonder what Caden Proctor's return really does for Alabama, schematically speaking, as far as its depth. Does Elijah Pritchett, is he just going to become Alabama's swing tackle, backup left and right tackle? Or is Elijah Pritchett one of your best 5 offensive linemen, and do you need to go ahead and get him acclimated to the right tackle position right now so that Caden Proctor and Elijah Pritchett can bookend your offensive line? You don't want to be having any offensive line questions for very much longer. Obviously, for right now, it's okay because you only have really one position to settle out. The 3 interior positions are pretty much locked in, and I do think that it's just a matter of time for Caden Proctor to take that left tackle position. So it's not a dire need. But when you look at Alabama's offense and you start questioning, okay, where do the pieces fit? Really the only question remains for me is that right tackle position. Jalen Milroe solidified right there, starting quarterback. You've got your running backs who are all 3 probably going to take different turns starting: Justice Haynes, Jam Miller, and Richard Young. And you've got pretty much your tight ends set in stone, and CJ Dupree and Josh Cuevas, and oh my gosh, Robbie Oots. Thank you. That's the guy whose name was slipping him off my tongue, Robbie Oots. And then your wide receivers are pretty much set as well. So for me, the only main question on the Alabama offense is how will the right tackle position line up? On the other side of the football, I've got questions on the Alabama front as well. And not at Alabama's defensive tackle position, while I do think that there is going to be a small competition there at the defensive tackle position, whether it's going to be Tim Smith or Jaheim Otis being the starter, which I think is probably going to be Jaheim Otis. But I don't have a huge question mark there because I have confidence in both Tim Smith and Jaheim Otis, whoever ends up winning the job besides Tim Keenan. My biggest question for Alabama along the defensive front, I know Coach Saban talked about defensive depth in the secondary, and we've talked about secondary a great deal through the summer. We've talked about depth at inside linebacker through the summer. But I'm starting to have some questions about Wolf. What happens at the Wolf position, Alabama's outside linebacker position? Now, obviously, the chalk will say, the depth chart will say it's Quandarius Robinson. and you look at Quandarius Robinson, highly touted recruit, spent time behind Will Anderson, spent time behind Dallas Turner, behind Chris Braswell, had one off the field incident a couple years ago, but has largely been a good soldier, has largely been a good special teamer, has been a spot defender, but a really good special teamer. But I wonder, as Quandarius Robinson enters his super senior year, if he's going to be the answer that Alabama really needs at the Wolf position. Is he going to be able to get a consistent pressure off the edge for Alabama? Is he going to be able to hold the edge when the run plays are coming towards his side of the line? How will he be affecting the quarterback? Alabama over the last 3 or 4 years has had a great luxury with Will Anderson and Dallas Turner. Obviously, Will Anderson, a generational pass rusher, and Dallas Turner, pretty darn good in his own right as well. Both of them first-round draft picks. And really, both of them were talented edge rushers that Nick Saban hadn't really ever seen a whole lot of during his tenure. You got to think about Tim Smith, Tim Williams being one of the other great edge rushers, but not many great edge rushers in the Nick Saban era. And so Quandarius Robinson, will he be the answer at Wolf, or will Alabama have to turn elsewhere? Will it be Keanu Coate, who's waited his turn, who was highly recruited as well, but has not really had a chance, has not really had an opportunity? I mean, basically everybody in the Wolf room has been stymied by first-round draft picks, by NFL players. You didn't see the field because Will Anderson was taking snaps. Oh, boo-hoo. What does that say about you? Nothing bad, in my opinion. You didn't see the field because Dallas Turner was taking the snaps at your position. Okay, so you couldn't beat out Dallas Turner. Does that mean you're a bad player? No, by no means. But I do wonder, I do have concerns about Quandarius Robinson and about Keanu Coate, and you see the other Wolf prospects, Yanzi Pierre, and you see Jayshon Ross, the other Wolf prospects, and you wonder, okay, which one of you guys is going to pop for Alabama? Which one of you guys is going to really wreak havoc off the edge for the Crimson Tide? And while I do think that Quandarius Robinson gives you a really good chance to do that, you haven't seen it yet out of him. Basically, everybody else on defense, both the inside linebackers, Jihad Campbell and Deontay Lawson, and really the three interior defensive linemen that we've highlighted, Tim Keenan, Tim Smith, and Jaheim Otis. Pretty much everybody has shown it to you at some point or other. Obviously, Devontae Jackson over at USC, Deshaun Jones at Wake Forest, Keon Sabb at Michigan. But so some of those guys haven't all shown it here at the Capstone, haven't all shown it here in Tuscaloosa. But out of everyone you're expecting to count on this year for Alabama's defense, you have seen flashes of ability, flashes of consistency, flashes of capability, except out of Quandarius Robinson. And so those are my two biggest question marks for the Crimson Tide going into fall camp. Who's going to play right tackle? Are you going to just end up using Elijah Pritchett, moving him from left tackle to right tackle? And if so, what are we waiting on? Why not go ahead and move him to right tackle so that he can get acclimated at the position? And the second question is, will Quandarius Robinson give you what? An iota? Will he give you a percentage point? Will he give you some of what Dallas Turner and Will Anderson gave you as an edge rusher the last 3 to 4 years here at the Capstone? Obviously, those shoes are massive to fill, and no one's looking for Quandarius Robinson to become Will Anderson. But will he be an adequate edge rusher? Will he come around and get what? Say 6 to 9 sacks this year for the Crimson Tide? That's my biggest question for Alabama's offense and defense going into fall camp. I want to talk about Ryan Williams, as we saw him just a little bit today. And look, what we saw today was 20 minutes of individual drills. Everybody broken off into drills and everybody doing position drills. No real live action. Now, obviously, the guys are going live through the drills, but not really indicative, in my opinion, of who's going to be a good football player and who's going to be a bad football player. Everything that we got to see today, and look, I'm thankful to be out there, absolutely thankful to be out there. But everything that we got to see today was fundamental work that if you are a good high school football player, you can make look good. We'll just say that. And obviously, they were getting coached up through the fundamental work. And after we were dismissed from the practice field, I'm sure that they got into higher level concepts and more difficult drill work and more difficult practice work. I'm sure that it did get more difficult than the 20 minutes that we got to see. But what we got to see was very basic stuff. And so you're going to hear a lot of, this about Ryan Williams and that about Ryan Williams. And I do think that it's okay to get excited about Ryan Williams. But what we saw out of Ryan Williams today was, okay, he went through the drills just like Jeremy Bernard, just like Kobe Prentice, just like Kendrick Law. He went to the drills just like all the other wide receivers. And did he look like a college wide receiver? Yes, he looked like a college wide receiver. And is that remarkable because he should be a high school senior still? Yes, it absolutely is remarkable. And I think that it's A-okay to get excited about Ryan Williams. I think that athletically speaking, his athleticism is good enough, is strong enough, is deep enough to make an impact on the Alabama offense this season. But I wrote down in my notes, how quickly will Ryan Williams be an impact player? And I don't think it's going to be that quick. I do think it's going to happen before the end of the year. I do think he's going to become one of Alabama's better wide receivers, one of Alabama's biggest weapons before the end of the year. But I think it's going to take some time for Ryan Williams to acclimate himself to the college game. And so, yes, we got to see Ryan Williams today. He made some athletic catches today, but really what we got to see was individual drill work that, while it's important for the start of the practice period, is not always indicative, in my opinion, of who's a good football player, who knows where to go, who knows the assignment, who knows the adjustments, who knows the checks, who knows the right formation, who knows everything to do like the back of their hand. And I think it's going to take some time for Ryan Williams to get there. Now, do I still think he's going to be an impact player? Again, just like I said 2.5 minutes ago, I do think he's going to be an impact player. But will that be week number 1 against Western Kentucky? No. Will that even be week number 5 against Georgia? Probably not. But could it be homecoming week against the Missouri Tigers? Yes. I think that's a nice target. I think you'll see Ryan Williams becoming involved, being a key contributor in the offense by about that time. Let's keep talking about morning practice. As we were over the Malmore Athletic Facility today, and we were so grateful to be there. But for everyone who said, "Oh, the guys are practicing in the morning because they're going to avoid the afternoon heat, and they're going to avoid the weather," while okay, there is some semblance of that. There is a little bit of avoiding the weather. We were out there for 20 minutes, and I was breaking a sweat, not doing anything at all. Not doing anything at all. So if you don't live in Tuscaloosa, that's okay. And we appreciate everybody who's listening or watching to us from out of town. But it's still very hot. It was 85 degrees, 86, 87 degrees, and the sun is starting to burn. That morning sun especially is brutal. And so, while, of course, the guys are getting a little bit of a reprieve from the 3:30 in the afternoon sun, it's still pretty toasty. And so while it was nice to get back inside when we were allowed to get back inside, obviously great to be there. And I'm not going to complain about a little sweat, but the truth of the matter is it was a little toasty during those 20 minutes, and I got a little bit sweaty in those 20 minutes. So the weather, I think, is still going to be a pretty significant factor during fall camp. Let's move on real quick by talking real quickly just about these 2 recruits that Alabama lost and that Alabama gained. In the last 2 days, Alabama gained 2 class of 2027 players. B-Rock Willis, and then in the last hour or so before we got started, got a linebacker, no, an edge rusher, Jabarius Guerrer. So two guys from in-state, Guerrer from Viger High School, and B-Rock Willis was also from in-state as well. Where did he? Was it Moody? Yes, it was Moody. So two guys from the in-state of Alabama. Look, I'm not going to get into anybody who's in the class of 2027 because while I do love the recruiting game, these guys are rising sophomores, and they can change their mind 12.5 times, as noted by Antonio Coleman. Alabama lost 2 commits in the class of 2025 this last week, both of them to the Auburn Tigers. Antonio Coleman flipping from Alabama to Auburn again. This is the second time he's made that same flip. He committed to Alabama, flipped to Auburn, reflipped to Alabama, and now has flipped back to Auburn. So he's made 4 different commitment decisions. I'm 100% committed all 4 times, but now is committed back with the Auburn Tigers. And Derek Smith has also flipped his commitment from Alabama to Auburn. And look, Hugh Freeze is getting some wins in the state of Alabama. Good for him and good for Auburn. Hugh Freeze has always been a strong recruiter. And so, look, does it stink? Yeah, sure, it does. It's it's not the best thing for Alabama football to lose 2 of its commitments to Auburn, but is it worth crying over? No, come on, it's recruiting. These are high schoolers. It'll all shake out. It's not that big of a deal. These guys need to go where they are most comfortable going. And if that's the Auburn Tigers, then I wish them well. I wish them success. Now, for Derek Smith, the only real insight that I could glean, and you probably already put these 2 and 2 together, but Derek Smith was probably going to be coming to Alabama to play safety, defensive back, the Southside Selma athlete. But now he's going to go to Auburn and more than likely end up playing wide receiver. Now, obviously, that could change, but I think that was the main driving factor for Derek Smith flipping his commitment from Alabama to Auburn. All right, before we wrap this up and then hear from Emily Grace McWhorter from the Next Round Live, we are going to talk about our defensive day tomorrow. Alabama, we're going to hear from Kane Womack and select defensive players tomorrow. But before we do that, I want to tell you about my friend Derek Daniel. You can find him up on Highway 69 North, 4604 Highway 69 North for all of your insurance needs. Derek Daniel, State Farm Insurance. You know you need home, life, and auto insurance. You need to make sure that you are properly covered, especially right now as the students come back into town. Right here in Tuscaloosa, they're coming from all areas of the country, and their driving styles honestly just don't mix with yours. So you need to make sure that your auto insurance is up to date with the right coverage, and you need to make sure that you are happy with what you're paying. If you're not happy with the rate that you're paying, you can call Derek Daniel today at 205-758-3391, and one of his qualified agents is going to get you a quick auto insurance quote. They're going to hopefully lower your rate and make sure that you are properly covered as the students are back into town. Make sure you call Derek Daniel. Call his office, Red, Reese, or Victoria. They'll be happy to give you a home, life, or auto insurance quote. Review your coverage. You know you need a local agent, someone who is in town who knows where to send your vehicle if you unfortunately get in an accident that so often happens right here in Tuscaloosa, thanks to our lovely out-of-state students. Call Derek today at 205-758-3391 for all of your insurance needs. All right, let's finish this up by talking about tomorrow. Tomorrow, we're going to hear from Kane Womack, and we're going to hear from Alabama defenders. And really, I will be curious about the 3 freshmen, the 3 transferees. I'll be curious about Deshaun Jones, King Mack, and Cam Howard, the three defensive backs who transferred into Alabama after spring practice. I'm going to be curious about Quandarius Robinson. I want to know if the guys are comfortable or what they see in Quandarius Robinson, if they think he's going to be the full-time starter at Wolf this season. And really, outside of that, I'm curious about depth at inside linebacker. We've talked about depth at inside linebacker many, many times throughout the summer, how I love Jihad Campbell and I love Deontay Lawson. And honestly, I love those 2 guys. They're 2 of probably my 10 favorite players on this team. I think they play football the right way. And I think they might be your best interior linebacker tandem in the conference or in the country. But behind them, I'm worried. I'm definitely nervous and concerned about the depth behind them. So I'm going to be curious about Justin Okoronkwo, about Jeremiah Alexander, about Justin Jefferson, how those guys have come on through the summer. And so I'm really, really going to have a lot of fun tomorrow with the defensive guys. We want to encourage you guys to follow the Bama Central YouTube channel. We put up 5 different practice videos, 6 really if you count the video sent to us from the University of Alabama Athletics. And then we were front and center for Kalen DeBoer's press conference after practice today. And we will be front and center again tomorrow for Kane Womack, and we'll have all kinds of coverage at practice and after practice. So subscribe to the Bama Central YouTube channel for all of your coverage on fall camp. Let's get out of here by planning on an interview with Emily Grace McWhorter. You follow her podcast, The Next Round Live. Those guys out of Birmingham do a great job covering all things SEC, and she joined me at SEC Media Days.
Welcome back to SEC Media Days. We're right here on the Joe Gaither Show on Bama Central and BamaCentral.com. We're here with Emily Grace McWhorter. You know her as EG. You can follow her on the Twitter machine at MEG_sports, and make sure you're following her podcast, The Next Round Live, a major part of the Next Round Live crew. EG, what do you think is the biggest takeaway here through 3 days of SEC Media Days?
Well, I'm losing track of my days just a little bit. So we are through, 10 teams now. We've got 6 left. The excitement is real, especially with Oklahoma and Texas. There's a difference in the air. This is my first SEC Media Days, but you can tell there's a lot of excitement. I think with the expanded 12-team playoff, there's been a lot of discussion about that. But I will say there hasn't been that viral moment yet beyond Coach Saban for getting his credential yesterday. But or was that on Monday? Monday. See, my days are getting mixed up. All that to say, it's just an exciting time. It's a historic SEC Media Days. You also have a lot of coaches that this is their first season in the SEC. Jeff Levy, Kalen DeBoer, Steve Sarkisian. I'm going to forget one. Brent Venable, excuse me. So it's a good spot to be in.
It's very exciting, and really, you hit it. Nobody's saying anything viral. I think it's just about the excitement. We're 48, 47 days away from kickoff. We heard from Alabama today, and the main story, the main talking point and question to all 3 Alabama players was Coach Nick Saban picking against the Crimson Tide, picking Texas and Georgia. Do you think that Coach Saban did that to motivate his players, or maybe he just wanted to honor his 2 assistant coaches, Steve Sarkisian and Kirby Smart?
I'm hesitant to take a stance on anything that Coach Saban says because, let's be honest, Coach Saban knows best. I will say this. One of the things he addressed was the secondary. So there is reason for concern. You have Kool-Aid McKinstry, Terrion Arnold now in the NFL, and there is a hole there. However, Malachi Moore, that is the guy. You've got some younger men behind him, but he decided to come back. And I've heard it from multiple players. He's a glue guy. He's one of those locker room guys that is going to bring the team together. Kalen DeBoer spoke really highly of him. Jalen speaks really highly of him. So I think that right there is going to be the basis of their secondary going forward, and we'll see how they progress. But really, since week 1 of Kalen DeBoer's tenure, that was the most addressing need, I would say.
Now, we had a lot of fun in January chasing airplanes. Kalen DeBoer flying into Tuscaloosa, who's flying in, and you all obviously followed that at Bama Central and on the Next Round Live. We heard from Kalen DeBoer for his first SEC Media Days. Not a whole lot of juice. What's your takeaways through 7 months on the job with Kalen DeBoer?
Kalen DeBoer is truthfully one of the nicest people I have interacted with in my career. And it's funny, we had him on the show earlier this morning. So we had a bright and early start with Coach DeBoer. You can check it out at Next Round Live for the full interview. And he is just genuinely nice. He's kind. He's very relaxed. And I always enjoy asking him questions because he's very insightful with his answers. Now, you're not going to get a reactionary measure from him, but I think what he's really good at is he's pouring into players and relationships. That's so important in this day and age of college football because of the transfer portal, because of NIL. And he emphasized today, someone asked him, what do you think the biggest similarities are between you and Coach Saban? He said, I think it comes down to that element of pouring into players, having a high demand of excellence. Saban had that, and I think DeBoer does have that. It just looks a tiny bit different.
Absolutely. We're talking to Emily Grace McWhorter of the Next Round Live. You follow her at MEG_sports and follow Next Round Live at Next Round Live. We've talked about Kalen DeBoer, and it all centers around the quarterback. Jalen Milrow spent a lot of time on Media Row, and we had a great time hearing from him in the media room. What big step do you think we can expect out of Jalen Milrow, and how do you think Kalen DeBoer can help him take that step?
Well, I think, Bama fans, you guys remember last season, there was that South Florida game. And a lot of people are saying that was the turning point for him. And I think in a lot of ways it really was. I think we're seeing a very dynamic player. A lot of quarterbacks have actually spoken on who Jalen Milroe is beyond, just an athlete on the field. And the reviews are he's great. He's a great guy. He's a leader. And I think that is the element of Jalen Milroe that we're going to get this season, is a confident leader that shows up first, literally 4:30 in the morning. Guys are trying to beat. No, Jalen would beat me to the locker room. But that element is so needed, especially in a time of transition. Him being able to step into that role, because, Joe, you think about this. He went through a lot of uncertainty, right? You're recruited by Nick Saban, and you land at Alabama. There's a little bit of questioning about who he is as a player. What can he do on the field? Can he live up to the expectations of Alabama? And let's not be so quick to forget, people wanted him to transfer. I'm going to call it out, guys. People wanted Jalen Milroe to transfer. Those same people are now praising him. But with that being said, he had an opportunity to fall back into the shadows and not really develop into the leadership role, because then Nick Saban retires and Kalen DeBoer comes in. What do you do? And instead of kind of shrinking back, he rose to that occasion into that leadership role. So I'm excited to see him. I do think that his overall game has developed more, and I think that this offensive scheme fits him. Yeah. He seems excited about it. Coach Sheridan is awesome. I haven't gotten a chance to talk to him recently, but it seems like things are gelling on that side of the ball.
All right, so the reason we're actually in Dallas, obviously SEC Media Days, but it's chosen Dallas as the location because Texas and Oklahoma. Yesterday we heard from the Oklahoma Sooners. Brent Venables was up there, and they're kind of going through a lot of question marks. Brent Venables, year number 3, is he the guy or not? Texas today. We're going to hear Steve Sarkisian. What's been your overall impressions of the two? I've been calling them blue bloods of college football coming into the SEC.
Well, I think it's a good thing for college football. Now, there are some people out there, and me included, a traditionalist. I love the traditional conferences. And I went to Georgia Southern. So I am all about those group of 5 schools also getting their chance to play schools like this to get their check and occasionally a win. But with that being said, it is so fun to be in this environment. And the SEC is just going to get better. The separation between the SEC and other conferences is growing because the sheer amount of talent that is just in this conference. So it's been fun to see. I think that the embrace has been warm. Horns down will not be considered a penalty. Surprise there? Not really. But it's been cool to see. And like I said, this is a historic event that we get to be a part of. And I'm excited to hear from Texas. I haven't really had much interaction with Steve Sarkisian. I've heard obviously lots about him. Quinn Ewers might be joining our show. We're going to see if we can swing that. So stay tuned. But it's going to be fun.
What about the drama with Texas? Quinn Ewers, Arch Manning. It seemed very publicly saying the right things, but you heard Paul Feinbaum a week or so ago say, oh, Arch Manning's going to end up being the starter. Will that relationship stay cordial throughout the remainder of the year?
I don't know. Quarterback battles are interesting, and it seems like every season we have one that's making headlines. This could be that one this season. I don't know. I think Quinn has proved himself as that guy. He is on the cover of College Football 25.
Have you played it yet?
I haven't. I'm not much of a video gamer, but I do enjoy the excitement around it. With that being said, I'm unsure. I can't speak on that enough to give you a full, well thought out answer, but I do think that we're going to see bits and pieces of that because he's also a Manning. Let's just call a spade a spade. He's a Manning. We want to see him in the headlines.
All right, last question for Emily Grace McWhorter. You follow her on the Twitter machine at MEG_sports and follow her podcast, The Next Round Live, at The Next Round Live. We got, 3 weeks until fall camp gets started. Woo! How will you spend your 3 weeks until all our lives get taken away by college football, which is an exciting part.
It is an exciting thing. Well, let's see. Joe, I'm actually going to see Taylor Swift. So she'll be in London. I think it's right at the start of fall camp. So I might be across the pond for the first part of it, but that's my last big trip I have planned before football season starts. So I will be in the UK seeing Taylor Swift. It's been a long time coming, and I'm very excited about that.
Well, tell Taylor and Travis we said hello. Make sure you follow Next Round Live at The Next Round Live. You can find them on all the podcast locations as well. Follow Immigration Water at MEG_sports. Thanks so much for your time, Eugene.
Absolutely.
And that's going to do it for our show today right here on the Joe Gaither Show on Bama Central and BamaCentral.com. As we get out of here, I want to thank Purple Turtle Roofing one more time. They're the #1 most reliable residential roof replacement company in Alabama and in Mississippi. Call Dustin Foley and his team today at 877-PT-ROOF-5 for your free roof inspection. That's 877-787-6635 to schedule your appointment, and one of their qualified employees will come check out your roof for free and make sure you're prepared for all of life's storms. Visit them online today at www.roofturtle.com. I'm going to get out of here for the day. We'll be back tomorrow after we hang out with the Alabama defense right here on the Joe Gaither Show on Bama Central and BamaCentral.com.
Thanks for joining us on today's edition of the Joe Gaither Show on Bama Central. Keep up with Joe on all his social media pages at Joe Gaither6. Subscribe, rate, and review the show on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, and be sure to read us daily at BamaCentral.com.